This video is based on official Ethiopian investigation reports and documented evidence. The story you're about to hear represents aviation's most damaging design failure, a case where corporate deception, regulatory capture, and hidden automation created a second tragedy that grounded an entire aircraft fleet worldwide. March 10, 2019, Ethiopian Airlines Flight 302 prepares for departure from Addis Ababa to Nairobi on what should be a routine regional flight. The Boeing 737 MAX 8, registration ETAVJ, is just 4 months old and represents Boeing's newest, most advanced single-aisle aircraft. Captain Yared Getachew commands the flight with extensive experience, while First Officer Ahmed Nur Mohammed serves as co-pilot. Their aircraft carries 149 passengers and 8 crew members, including delegates heading to a United Nations Environment Assembly meeting in Nairobi. Less than 5 months after Lion Air 610's crash revealed the 737 MAX's deadly secret, Ethiopian 302 faces the same hidden enemy, MCAS, the Maneuvering Characteristics Augmentation System that Boeing concealed from pilots and training manuals. Despite warnings issued after Lion Air's tragedy, Ethiopian's crew receives post-crash bulletins about MCAS malfunctions, but no formal training on the system's operation or failure modes. They board their aircraft unaware that Boeing's software can overpower their control inputs without warning. This is the story of Ethiopian Airlines 302, how Boeing's refusal to ground the MAX fleet after Lion Air created conditions for a second preventable tragedy, and how 157 people paid the ultimate price for corporate negligence and regulatory failure. Following Lion Air 610's crash in October 2018, Boeing faces mounting pressure to address MCAS design flaws, but chooses corporate damage control over passenger safety. The manufacturer issues operational bulletins to airlines while downplaying the system's fundamental problems. Boeing's November 2018 Operations Manual Bulletin directs pilots to existing emergency procedures for runaway stabilizer conditions, but fails to explain MCAS's unique characteristics or provide specific training for the system's failure modes. The Federal Aviation Administration supports Boeing's position, issuing Emergency Airworthiness Directive 2018-2351 that reminds pilots to follow existing procedures without requiring additional training or aircraft modifications. Ethiopian Airlines, like operators worldwide, distributes Boeing's bulletin through electronic flight bag systems, but provides no simulator training or detailed briefings on MCAS operation. Pilots receive written instructions about uncommanded nose-down trim, but lack understanding of the underlying system. Boeing continues delivering new 737 MAX aircraft to airlines worldwide, including Ethiopian's ETAVJ in November 2018. The manufacturer maintains that existing pilot procedures adequately address MCAS malfunctions despite evidence from Lion Air that these procedures prove insufficient. International aviation authorities defer to FAA leadership despite growing concerns about the 737 MAX's safety. The aircraft continues operating on thousands of flights daily, while Boeing develops software fixes that won't be ready for months. Ethiopian Flight 302's crew represents thousands of pilots flying the MAX with incomplete information about the aircraft's most dangerous system, setting the stage for history's second preventable MCAS tragedy. Flight 302 departs Addis Ababa BL International Airport at 8:38 a.m. local time, with clear weather and excellent visibility for the 2-hour flight to Nairobi. Captain Getachew and First Officer Mohammed follow standard procedures for the Boeing 737 MAX departure. The aircraft climbs normally through Ethiopian airspace as crew members manage routine navigation and communication tasks. Passengers include UN delegates, humanitarian workers, and families traveling between East Africa's major cities. Ethiopian's maintenance records show ETAVJ in excellent condition with no significant discrepancies. The 4-month-old aircraft represents Boeing's latest technology and Ethiopian's investment in modern, fuel-efficient operations. However, like Lion Air 610, Flight 302 carries a hidden vulnerability, an angle of attack sensor providing false data to the aircraft's flight control systems. This sensor will soon trigger MCAS activation based on non-existent stall conditions. As the 737 MAX climbs through 8,100 feet, approximately 1 minute after takeoff, the damaged AOA sensor begins sending erroneous signals indicating the aircraft's nose angle is much higher than actual flight conditions warrant. First Officer Mohammed reports flight control problem to air traffic control as multiple warning systems activate simultaneously. The crew faces the same cascading emergencies that overwhelmed Lion Air's pilots 5 months earlier. Unlike Lion Air, Ethiopian's crew has received post-crash warnings about MCAS, but the information proves inadequate for managing the complex emergency now unfolding in their cockpit as hidden automation begins its deadly sequence. At 8:39 a.m., approximately 1 minute after takeoff, MCAS receives false data from the damaged angle of attack sensor and begins its programmed response to prevent a non-existent stall condition. The system commands nose-down stabilizer trim without pilot input or awareness. Captain Getachew and First Officer Mohammed feel the aircraft's nose drop despite their efforts to maintain a climbing attitude. Multiple warning systems activate simultaneously. Stick shaker, airspeed disagree alerts, and altitude warnings create a chaotic cockpit environment. The crew attempts to identify their emergency using available procedures, but Boeing's concealment of MCAS from flight manuals means they cannot understand the source of their aircraft's erratic behavior or access specific countermeasures. Ethiopian's pilots have received Boeing's post-Lion Air bulletin about uncommanded nose-down trim, but the written instructions prove inadequate for managing the complex automation failure they now face during a critical flight phase. MCAS activates repeatedly, each cycle moving the horizontal stabilizer further toward the nose-down position. The crew counters with elevator inputs and electric trim, temporarily overriding the system's commands but unable to prevent its reactivation. Air traffic controllers clear Flight 302 for immediate return to Addis Ababa as the crew declares their emergency. However, the aircraft's condition continues deteriorating as MCAS authority increases with each activation cycle. The pilots follow their training by attempting to use manual electric trim to counter MCAS, but high airspeed creates aerodynamic forces that make manual control increasingly difficult. The aircraft enters a flight regime where standard procedures prove inadequate against automated system authority. Before we continue with this tragic sequence, we want to thank our viewers who follow through the pilot's eyes. These investigations into automation failures help us understand modern aviation challenges. Your subscriptions help us research these critical aviation safety stories. Ethiopian's crew fights desperately against MCAS as the system repeatedly commands nose-down trim that overwhelms their control authority. The pilots attempt various recovery techniques while managing multiple simultaneous warnings and system failures. Captain Getachew and First Officer Mohammed coordinate their response using crew resource management principles, with one pilot maintaining aircraft control while the other works through emergency checklists and communicates with air traffic control. The crew temporarily disables the automatic trim system by switching off the STAB trim cutout switches, following the procedure recommended in Boeing's post-Lion Air bulletin. This action stops MCAS activation and gives the pilots momentary relief from nose-down commands. However, high airspeed and aerodynamic forces make manual trim wheel operation extremely difficult. The pilots cannot generate sufficient force to move the horizontal stabilizer using the manual trim wheel alone, leaving the aircraft in a nose-down configuration. Facing continued control difficulties, the crew makes the fateful decision to re-engage the automatic trim system, hoping to use electric trim to regain proper aircraft attitude. This action reactivates MCAS, which immediately resumes its nose-down commands. The reactivated system quickly overwhelms the crew's ability to maintain control as MCAS commands become more aggressive. The aircraft enters a steep dive that the pilots cannot arrest through manual control inputs alone. Despite their knowledge of post-Lion Air procedures, the Ethiopian crew cannot overcome the fundamental design flaws that make MCAS impossible to control during high-speed flight conditions. With MCAS reactivated, Flight 302 enters an unrecoverable dive as the automation system overwhelms all pilot control inputs. The aircraft descends at rates exceeding 33,000 feet per minute despite the crew's desperate efforts to regain control. The combination of high airspeed, nose-down stabilizer position, and continued MCAS activation creates aerodynamic forces that exceed human capability to overcome through manual flight controls. The pilots pull back on control columns with maximum force but cannot arrest the descent. Captain Getachew and First Officer Mohammed maintain their coordination until the final moments following professional protocols despite facing an impossible situation created by Boeing's design failures and inadequate pilot training. Air traffic controllers lose contact with Flight 302 as the aircraft descends through lower altitudes at tremendous speed. Emergency services prepare for the worst as radar contact is lost approximately 6 minutes after takeoff. The 737 MAX's flight data recorder captures the crew's valiant efforts to save their aircraft using every technique available through their training and experience. Their professional response reflects the highest standards of Ethiopian aviation despite inadequate information about their aircraft's hidden systems. Ethiopian's pilots perform exactly as Boeing predicted in its safety analysis, attempting to counter MCAS with manual trim and stabilizer cutout procedures. However, the manufacturer's assumptions about pilot capability prove fatally flawed when applied to real emergency conditions. The crew's inability to control their aircraft despite following post-Lion Air procedures exposes the fundamental inadequacy of Boeing's response to the first MAX tragedy and the company's failure to ground the fleet pending proper fixes. At 8:44 a.m. local time, 6 minutes after takeoff, Ethiopian Airlines Flight 302 impacts the ground near Bishoftu at approximately 600 mph, creating a crater 90 feet wide and 120 feet long. The tremendous impact forces destroy the aircraft completely, killing all 157 people aboard. The crash site investigation reveals the horizontal stabilizer in the full nose-down position, identical to Lion Air 610's configuration. This physical evidence immediately links both accidents to MCAS malfunction and Boeing's design failures. Flight data recorder information confirms MCAS activated multiple times during Ethiopian's brief flight, repeatedly commanding nose-down trim that the pilots could not overcome. The data proves the system operated exactly as programmed despite receiving false angle of attack information. Ethiopian authorities immediately ground their 737 MAX fleet pending investigation results. The airline's decision, based on obvious similarities to Lion Air, demonstrates proper safety prioritization that aviation regulators failed to show. News of the second MAX crash within 5 months creates international aviation crisis. Airlines worldwide begin questioning the aircraft's safety, while passengers refuse to fly on Boeing's newest aircraft. The impact crater's dimensions reflect the aircraft's tremendous speed at impact, demonstrating the crew's complete loss of control despite their professional efforts and knowledge of post-Lion Air procedures. Investigation teams secure the crash site and begin evidence recovery while Ethiopian authorities coordinate with international aviation safety agencies. The accident becomes a turning point, forcing worldwide recognition of the 737 MAX's fundamental design flaws. The 157 victims represent the ultimate cost of Boeing's corporate decisions and regulatory failures that enabled a preventable second tragedy. Within hours of Flight 302's crash, aviation authorities worldwide begin grounding the 737 MAX fleet as similarities to Lion Air 610 become undeniable. China leads the grounding decision, followed rapidly by European and Indonesian authorities. The Federal Aviation Administration initially resists grounding pressure, issuing a continued airworthiness notice on March 11 that defends the MAX's safety despite overwhelming evidence of systematic problems. International pressure mounts as airlines voluntarily ground their MAX fleets and countries ban the aircraft from their airspace. The FAA finds itself isolated as the only major regulator still supporting MAX operations. On March 13, President Trump orders the grounding of all 737 MAX aircraft in U.S. airspace, completing worldwide action affecting all 387 delivered aircraft. The decision represents the largest simultaneous fleet grounding in aviation history. Boeing's stock price collapses as investors recognize the crisis magnitude. The company faces congressional investigations, criminal charges, and billions in losses as the MAX grounding extends indefinitely. Airlines cancel thousands of weekly flights, disrupting global travel while Boeing attempts to develop MCAS software fixes. The grounding affects 59 airlines operating 8,600 weekly flights across 6 continents. Ethiopian's accident exposes the inadequacy of Boeing's post-Lion Air response and forces recognition that written bulletins cannot substitute for proper aircraft design and pilot training. The Ethiopian Aircraft Accident Investigation Bureau's final report confirms that faulty AOA sensor data triggered repetitive MCAS activations, making Flight 302 uncontrollable. The investigation identifies 10 contributing factors, all related to Boeing's design failures. Analysis reveals Ethiopian's crew followed post-Lion Air procedures correctly, including disabling automatic trim and attempting manual control. However, Boeing's assumptions about pilot capability proved fatally flawed during real emergency conditions at high airspeed. The investigation exposes Boeing's engineering design error in the original AOA sensor hazard analysis, a critical flaw the manufacturer concealed from Ethiopian authorities even after discovering it following Lion Air's crash. Ethiopian investigators conclude MCAS design violated fundamental aviation safety principles by relying on single-point failure modes and providing no effective recovery procedures during malfunction conditions. The report criticizes Boeing's inadequate training materials and the FAA's certification process that allowed MCAS to operate without proper pilot awareness during original certification. International agencies, including the NTSB and French BEA, provide additional analysis highlighting training deficiencies that compound Boeing's design failures. The investigation reveals Boeing's post-Lion Air bulletin provided insufficient guidance for managing MCAS failures during high-speed flight, making Flight 302's loss inevitable despite crew knowledge of the system. As we conclude this investigation into the second preventable MAX tragedy, we thank our viewers who follow through the pilot's eyes. These studies of design failures help us understand aviation certification and corporate accountability. Your support allows us to research these crucial aviation safety stories. Ethiopian Airlines Flight 302's investigation forces fundamental changes in aviation certification and corporate accountability. Boeing faces over $2.5 billion in criminal fines and victim compensation, while executives face congressional testimony and legal scrutiny. The 737 MAX returns to service in November 2020 after 20 months of grounding, with redesigned MCAS requiring input from both AOA sensors and enhanced pilot training, including mandatory simulator sessions. The era of hidden automation ends as transparency becomes mandatory for certification. The Federal Aviation Administration undergoes major reforms, reducing delegated authority and increasing direct oversight. International cooperation in aviation safety oversight increases significantly. Ethiopian Airlines eventually returns the 737 MAX to service after receiving adequate training and aircraft modifications. The airline's initial grounding decision demonstrates proper safety prioritization. The 157 victims of Flight 302 are remembered through enhanced safety standards, protecting millions of future passengers. Their tragedy ensures corporate profits can never again supersede aviation safety.